Thank you, Nidra. Next, I'd like to introduce Jean Holm. She's the evangelist for data.gov, which is a collaboration with educators, developers, and international and state governments, and was also the architect and implementer of the award-winning NASA website. So we're pleased to welcome Jean to tell us more about how the government is using data in the social world.
Thank you. I think there should be some different slides. So while they're trying to sort that out, I think, what I wanted to do is tell you a little bit about data.gov. Data.gov is an initiative from the Obama administration, the White House, that's focused on bringing information from government agencies up and out of all the stovepipes where it gets collected and aggregated and analyzed for our own internal uses, and really brought out to the public for people to be able to use it in ways we could never imagine. So part of this activity is a transparency project and really understanding how to open up government data and to make people understand that the government wants to be held accountable for both our actions and our activities, but also really to collaborate for innovation. Again, in the government, we're all hired to do a job. So I've spent 26 years at NASA. I'm currently on loan to the White House. And so, you know, we're there to launch rockets and to explore space and do all that great kind of stuff, but at the end of the day, what we're really is about knowledge. So we find out information about other planets, we find out information about our own planet, things that can inform us to make better decisions every day. And that's what every agency does and what we want to share with you. So we try to break down these stovepipes amongst the different data, and the reason why this is important is that we actually try to focus on a variety of topical areas. Originally, it was just this big data warehouse of 400,000 data sets, which is a lot of data, but not a lot of data if you're looking for something specific about childhood obesity. So we've created these venues called communities. And our first communities were kind of technical for the developers who tend to be our early audience. But then we really understood and listened, as Marty says, to what people wanted. And what we realized is that what we were seeing on Twitter, because we're very active on Twitter, what we were seeing on other social media was that people didn't talk about data, they talked about health, our law, our energy, our climate. So our first community actually was done in partnership, our first big community was done in partnership with Todd Park, who's an amazing person, who's the Chief Technology Officer of the Health and Human Services Department. He is passionate about driving innovation through the use of the information that we already collect and understand about health. And part of what that has done is led to this new community called health.data.gov. This brings together information resources, not just from the government, but and across the government, of course, but at city and local levels, at state levels, with other international governments, and with the health sector too. So we go to industry, to private practices, to medical doctors, to universities and researchers across the country and across the globe who are collecting data, and we try to figure out different ways, and we try to encourage the public to figure out different ways of bringing this together. So we all talk about sort of using social media, and it can drive people to your website, and that's great, but really, aren't we all trying to get an individual to change their behavior? I mean, at the end of the day, we're all here because we want someone to make a choice to be healthier in that instant. Okay, hopefully all those instants lead together to a long-term change. But in that moment, what is it that will make somebody change? It's information. So what we've done is we've opened up all this information, and we've asked people to create ways in which they think they can help to change individuals' behavior. So we have, so in partnership with the First Lady's Initiative, obviously, I mean, we've all been talking about that, but what came out of Let's Move was not just sort of these activities, but a fundamental change in the way that people start to perceive their ability to change themselves. Because the only way to affect change is by changing yourself inside. So here's a game that was developed by a group of kids, actually, called Hungry Hiker. And so this was built on data that we provide from the US Department of Agriculture on the food pyramid, like a really boring set of data. But what these kids did is they put it together and said, you know, if we don't eat the right amounts of the right kinds of foods, a little bit of everything, and heavy on the veggies, then we're not going to be able to do what we want to do with our lives. We're not going to be able to be healthy and free and exercise and play. And so if you don't feed the hiker in this game the right foods in the right proportions, she doesn't make it to the top of the mountain and she falls down. And it's really sad, and it's very bizarrely animated in the kind of way that, you know, my kids and lots of kids think it's great. So this rolled out. We hosted up on the White House site. But most importantly, we were at the USA Science and Engineering Festival in the mall in Washington, D.C. last year. 500,000 people came through. It was amazing. Kids, teachers, parents, just random people walking by Washington that Saturday. And 5,000 people came through our booth where we had Hungry Hiker and another app called Smash Your Food that showed that when you actually like crush potato chips, all the grease that comes out, it totally changed the way I eat. And we couldn't keep up because we only had, you know, a few number of terminals, and those kids, every last one of them said, "Oh my gosh, this is so fun to learn." I'm like, great. They really changed themselves. The other thing we learned is that sometimes it's about synergy. So again, trying to change somebody's behavior. We were talking earlier about food deserts, and the speaker before was talking about how she lives in a food desert. So you all know about food deserts. So Health and Human Services puts out this information about childhood obesity levels, but they also put out information about food deserts and farmers markets data. So if you look at so these are two independent applications. They weren't even developed, the top one wasn't even developed here in America. It was developed by a citizen in Colombia. And he tracks the obesity levels across America. So this kind of shows you the Washington, D.C. area there on that map. And down in the bottom, you see lots of green around the edges. That's where there's healthy food choices. And in the middle, a lot of red and empty space, and that's a food desert. The center of that food desert is Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C. So not such a great place. But you can see the correlation between food deserts and obesity levels. And you can see that everywhere you find a food desert in America. And when people get that information, not only can they as an individual change their behavior, but as a government, we can change our behavior too. And that's really, I think, at the heart of what we're trying to get to here. It's not about making an individual a victim because they have an issue, but really trying to change the environment around them to enable them to make better choices in a way that realizes the complications they have in their own lives. So here what we do is we inform the local governments about these kinds of issues, and they change city zoning laws based on, are we going to allow that next new business that comes in to be another fast food business, another corner liquor store? Are we going to work really hard to bring in a weekend farmer's market or a small grocery store that can really give our citizens a better way to make that choice every day? And this is really sort of a breathtaking application called Asmopolis. And I know this isn't about obesity, but I really wanted to focus on this because it does show you the change that people will make given information and knowledge. So Asmopolis was just started recently. It's a small company with a brilliant idea. So I think everybody's kind of familiar with, you know, people have asthma and they carry inhalers around. So every time they have an asthma issue, you pump your inhaler, right? So every time they pump their inhaler, there's a little tiny GPS device. And so they can find, so working with their doctor, they use this different kind of inhaler, and they create a map that shows where they go every day and when they have an asthma attack triggered. Brilliant, simple, logical, makes sense, right? Because it turns out that the vast majority of asthma attacks are begun because somebody has an irritant in the environment. So they've done this beta test. We aggregate the data. I mean, so as a government, we obviously don't look at individual data, but we look at aggregated data from the company, and we can see hotspots in cities so that we can say, you know, there's this huge incidence of asthma attacks around this locale. Are there pollutants? Because we track what buildings have different kinds of chemicals and what might have pollutants. Were there fires? Is there a construction site that they're not doing, you know, good water down of the dust and dirt? In the first 6 months of using the Asmopolis capabilities with that inhalers and this mapping, and it's all mobile, so like parents can help monitor for their kids as well. The first 6 months, it went from 65% daily incidence of asthma issues to 25%. That's huge. And all that it took was knowledge. They didn't change the behaviors, really, because they were still using inhalers. They didn't have to do something different. But simply knowing what triggered that attack and how important it was to them changed their behavior so that our health as a community improved. So it's really about informing kids. It's about informing adults. It's about informing everybody so that they can make these choices. So we've launched this whole K-12 education campaign out of the White House and data.gov to try to make a better difference in how people look at information and how they think about how they can help others look at it in ways that are going to make a difference for them and take actions. So now we're actually part of the International Science Fair. So you guys, if you have kids and you've ever like made those windmills and those volcanoes late at night, I don't know about you, my kids always tell me the night before they have a science fair. And so what we find is that as being part of the curriculum for that, then every kid who goes through that program, which is virtually every kid here in California, during their middle school years, they get access to that information, they understand data, and they're being able to make the different kinds of decisions that they need to make every day. So the kinds of things that you learn, the kinds of changes that you make affect government decisions in ways that we can help to make better zoning laws, better access to information, and ways that can help to improve the citizens around and the citizens in their environment. So share your data and your projects. We're up on the White House side at data.gov, and follow us on Twitter. We're all over social media because that's really the way that we engage and listen and can change.